one day at a time. I kept the first thing first, and that was staying sober. Because I knew that if that goes, everything else goes. Anything else I put in front of my sobriety, like a girlfriend or a birthday or whatever, if I go start drinking and partying again, I'm going to lose everything that I've built. It's happened time and time again. I've done it. I've built it up, burned it down, built it up, burned it down over and over again.
Baby.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 28 of the Spread Good podcast. My name is Brodi Nicholas, and you already know who it is. What's up, Nick?
Mr. Celebrate Life in the building, spreading good. Excited for our guest today.
Yes, we have a really, really good guest today. A new friend of mine. I'm really excited to have him on today. Jeffrey Brogger, musician, digital nomad, digital marketer, real estate marketer. How you doing, man?
Fantastic. Really happy to be here and looking forward to spreading some good.
Yeah, there's a lot of good to be spread. I know Nick and I, we always talk about the pre-talks when we have guests on.
Yeah.
We kind of had an idea how we wanted this episode to go, and then Jeff hopped in here, and we had a little chat that was getting too fired up. So we're like, let's turn these cameras on and get it going.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think you guys technically met first, right? At the event?
Yeah, at the event we met. That was a pretty fun event in Irvine, right? Was it in Irvine?
Yeah, I think it was in Irvine. Shout out to Ocean. That was actually the first event that I went to with them.
Oh, my first event too.
Yeah. There you go. Meant to be.
Yeah.
And I met both these guys at that event and thought it was cool. Just the whole concept, spread good, everything that they were doing. I personally donate to charities fairly often, and we started to talk, and they actually had a gala coming up, so I was able to contribute to that.
Yeah, it was great. He donated a car package, which helps some kids go on their dream trips, which is really cool. And you have one of your side companies is a car company, right?
Yeah, right. So I have a company that I just started this summer. It's called Status Symbol Exotics, and it's a company that rents out exotic vehicles, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and it's actually a lot more work than I initially thought. So it's not going to go very much farther than this summer, probably. But I love the whole exotic car culture because it introduces me to people that can help expand my network, ultimately be more successful. And then at the end of that is always giving back more and more.
I love that. And you're working with a company called Ylopo?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah. So kind of a funny name, YLOPO. It's the last 5 letters of Monopoly spelled backwards. Mm. And the founders created it that way because Monopoly is the ultimate game of real estate. And when they started this digital marketing company, they wanted to just flip the game of real estate on its head. Lead generation, oftentimes this comes from real estate portals, and they instead wanted to empower agents to have digital marketing of their own so that they could control their own destiny. And, Ylopo could be the digital marketing arm, while then the agent is the sales arm, and they could be successful together as partners.
And how did you come across that? You were doing your own thing, right?
Yeah, right. So again, you never know what doors will be opened when you go into a new venture. And that's something that I came to understand pretty early in my career and throughout college. When you go down some path that's unknown at the beginning, doors will open. It just depends on what path that is, whether it's a path of righteousness or a path of selfishness, and just depends on what you're doing, but you'll meet people either way. Doors will be opened either way. And so with Ylopo, I had my own company called Steezy Digital. And Steezy is a little bit of homage paid to my upbringing in San Diego. It actually means style with ease. And it's a skate, surf, kind of extreme sports term. So I had Steezy Digital. That company allowed me to escape my day job in my 20s and do some awesome travel around the world and do some really cool things. But when I was successful with that company, I was successful because I niched down. I solved one problem for one industry. And the industry that I chose was real estate. I started to ask anyone I knew in real estate. I just sat them down for lunch, interviewed them, hey, what's going on? What's holding you back from not doing transactions? I just started to ask. And it kept coming back to lead generation and follow-up, having efficient systems, being able to run ads, do marketing. And I was like, I can do all that stuff. And if I don't know how to do it, I can learn. So I just dove in, and once I niched down, that's when the success really came from that business. And then Steezy Digital, led to then being recruited by Wailopo years later. Once again, you never know the door. I met him at a conference, talked to the founders. They're like, man, we'd love to have guys like you on the team. And nothing transpired for a year or two, but then finally, like, it all worked out. They needed someone to help them out. And now I'm head of B2B growth at Wailopo.
Fired up, man. That's super cool. And one thing that really drew me to you, and I've talked to the guys about this, is you're really into investing in yourself, like getting coaching, learning, but you invest into other people. You really spend time. And a lot of people talk about, like, why start business to solve a problem. And you really bear down and make that happen, which is super cool.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's super important. I mean, you got to invest in yourself. And I always believe in giving back whenever you can. And that can come in many different forms. Oftentimes it's monetarily, but many other times it's just simply with time or advice, insight, consulting. It's things that you can do, and you can change someone's life with a little bit of information that that's benefited you, and you can just share with them. So I always try and keep that in mind.
I love that.
And where did you get that outlook from? From your upbringing, from experiences? Where do you think you got that from?
Yeah, great question. So early on in my life, I got into direct sales because out of necessity, really. I wasn't born a salesman by any means. I was a pretty shy, awkward kid. I had 3 older sisters, and both my father and my stepfather were heavy drinkers from pretty early on. And so, alcohol was just kind of like there all the time. It was at parties, it was at funerals, it was just like always there. And so being the youngest of 4 and having 3 older sisters, they also would then sometimes throw parties, and I'm like 10 years old, and there's, all these people in the house drinking. So I was always exposed to that stuff. And I say that in terms of like what led you to have that mindset, because pretty early on I saw how alcohol changed people, and I said, I'm never going to drink. I'm never going to do any of that. It changes people. And lo and behold, I turned 13, 14, 15, and I fell right in line and started to do all the wrong things. And there's a whole story behind that, but the real crux of it was that I was always an athlete. I played baseball from the time I was like 4 years old, and did a ton of other sports, but that was my organized sport. And in high school, I missed a physical, couldn't play the baseball season. And then my buddies were like, hey, you want to go, drink after school or whatever? I always said no. I have baseball. That was always my excuse. Now I didn't have that excuse. So I was like, all right, sure. And from the first day drinking, it was just like, I knew all the tricks. I knew, how to pour drinks. And I'd seen it happen around me my entire upbringing with my family. And my family, they're all great people. Like, I don't want to make it seem like it was anything more than it was. Super loving family, so many positives. But the alcohol was always there, and it was very prevalent. So anyway, that led me to have this whole journey with alcoholism of my own, smoking, marijuana pretty early on. Being born and raised in California, it was already like medically accepted, and then it was starting to become recreational as I was going through high school. And so all that led to me starting to get in trouble in high school, get arrested. I was arrested for trespassing and smoking weed with my friends. And I remember how disappointed my dad was, and that was when I was like 16. And then, when I was 17, I got pulled out of school one day, and my dad was in the ICU, and he actually had cirrhosis of the liver and was basically dying from alcoholism. And so he went into the hospital on a Friday, and then, that Sunday, he had been on life support for 3 days, and we decided to pull the plug. So that was a tragic weekend, totally earth-shattering for me, a 16, 17-year-old boy. My whole life and sense of security had been ripped out from under me. And, I lived with my father, and, my parents were split up, but I lived with him, and I was going up through high school and experiencing challenges and struggling with my own addiction. And then, all of a sudden my dad's gone. And so that just fueled everything. It actually turned first into workaholism. I started to achieve at a high level and said, my mom, my sisters, they're not gonna have to worry about me. Like I'm I'm never going to have them worry about me financially. I'm good. I got this. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself to succeed at that moment. I kind of grew up all in an instant. And I went back to high school for my senior year. And, when people were talking about little drama or homecoming, I couldn't relate anymore. None of that had any weight or mattered to me anymore. It was so frivolous, seemingly. So I just started to work 3 jobs in high school and get ready for college. And, pretty soon after that, being so monetarily motivated, I realized I could make a lot more money doing direct sales than I could at 3 restaurant jobs, because Cutco, the
No
knife
way.
thing. Yeah. I got a phone call. I was get this. So I was in between a morning shift at one restaurant and a night shift at the other. And I was laying on my girlfriend at the time's bed, and I got a phone call. It was a referral call when they're like, hey, your friend's making $16 an hour and you can da-da-da-da. And I was like, they're making how much?
Yeah, back
So
to marketing.
I called in sick to my night shift and went to that interview. And that changed the whole trajectory of my life, because it wasn't all at once. It wasn't immediate. And this is finally circling back to answer your question. It wasn't all at once, but I went through their training. I actually took off that whole weekend to go through their training and do their whole, first launch, everything. I did everything to the T. And my first 13 demos, my family thought it was a scam. I went 0 sales for 13 appointments.
Oh.
And that was the managers were like, what happened? This never happens. Their ratios are 60% closing ratio. It's a great product. And so basically I stuck with it. I started to then get to the point where I could go do an appointment, and I made 10% commission on $1,000 set of knives. And that was the homemaker. That was the goal, but the average order was really $250. So if you sell a homemaker, that's 4 times the average order, and you're making 10%. And so as a high school student, I remember leaving my friend's mom's house with an order in my hand and said, I just made $100 an hour. That blew my mind, that I could have that earning ability at that age. I had all these preconceived notions about money. It doesn't grow on trees. You need all this higher education. To me, there were all these barriers between me and money. And then all of a sudden, bam, 10x what I'd ever made in an hour was just injected into my bank account. And the next week, direct deposited, boom, and it showed up, and I was like, whoa, that's interesting. And so I became committed. I quit my jobs. I paid for college essentially with Cutco, and I ended up being a top 1% sales rep in their organization, sold hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of knives. I was the sales manager at North San Diego. We did $2 million a year, back-to-back years, and we're the number 1 office in the nation out of 800 offices. And
So you got the silver cup.
got the silver cup.
Yep, I got it 1 year too.
Nice.
Yeah, dude, that's wild, because I felt like we already had so many synergies, and going into this pod,
Yeah.
I had no idea you slang blades.
Yeah,
Dude,
that's right.
yep. So did you work with Paul Comstock?
Yeah, no Comstock.
Yeah.
Wes Goddard was my
Oh wow,
my
okay.
manager.
Do you know Robert Gonzalez?
Yeah,
Yeah, I was in his wedding.
nice.
Yeah, well, I was
and
at-
Gilbert.
Yeah, I was at his, Disneyland with him last weekend.
Yeah,
That's-
all those guys,
wow.
man.
Okay, this shout out Vector Marketing.
Shout
we're
out
gonna,
Vector
We're gonna
Marketing.
tag them, so this goes up on
Skills for
Instagram.
life.
Skills for life, dude.
That's right.
You know, it's crazy. You met Katie, my fiance. She worked at Cutco too.
That's right.
And wow, wild.
So
wild.
My wife did Cutco for a little bit.
What? So
yeah.
did Cutco?
Yeah.
shout out Cutco.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody does Cutco,
Cutco
I
gang.
guess.
Wow.
So that gave me the exposure to personal development. So here's now the final answer to your question. Personal development became a means for me to increase my earning ability, because they started to throw me into these conferences. I'd go to summer conference 1, summer conference 2. Oh, hey, you can go to the rep development conference because you're a top rep. Only top reps get to go. But there was advanced training there. And when I applied that next summer, I 6x'd my income. And I was like, whoa, there's a direct correlation to how much personal development I do and how much money I make. Direct correlation. I go learn some new information that's extra paid, some kind of investment, and I invest in myself, and I go apply it, I make more money. And so that correlation at 18 years old was just implanted in my head. And now I've been on a 14-year journey since then. I just turned 32. It's just personal development. Every time I get a chance, throwing more money at personal development, because that allows everything else to expand, and there's more to give. There's more to have a larger lifestyle, but also give back more. And I'll get to my philosophy of the whole like financial, what to give. I think a lot of people struggle with how much or what, but
Right.
I'll get to that if we want to touch on that too.
Yeah, man, so much to uncover, but still just wrapping my head around that we were probably at the same conferences. 'Cause
Yeah,
we're the same
right.
age. So that's nuts.
We were at the
That's
same
nuts.
summer conferences and everything.
And I think, looking back at that model, like the more you put into yourself, the more you make. But I'll be honest, I really love field training. It was like you give back by showing these other reps how to slang. And it's really cool. You show them the referral process, and like seeing them hit their first K, it's a big deal because so many reps don't get there.
I want to touch on that.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
So Vector and Cutco, a lot like other organizations, you get to a certain point and you're either a extremely successful sales rep and you keep going down that route solo, or you go into management. And so you have to have that choice internally. What do I value more, right? I know a ton of, they're called Cutco sales professionals. Still today, 10, 15 years later, some of my best friends in the world are still selling blades down in San Diego, doing shows, and they're Cutco sales professionals. Great way to go. But I really resonated with management. It was more work for less pay. But I'll tell you what, at the end of summer, when I just got finished working, 60, 80, 100-hour weeks all summer as a sales manager, and then I have all these kids telling me, thank you so much. I did not know I was capable of that. Thank you so much. I told you when I got hired that I wanted to put a down payment on a car before I went to college, and I just got the car. Like I drove here in it. And all those little things that I helped them overcome their fears, and when they're trying to avoid making phone calls, and I would just come back to, hey, why are you here? And help to motivate them and get them over themselves and their own barriers. They would have a breakthrough, and they experienced this growth directly due to my effort and information. Like that meant so much more to me than just being a top sales rep.
Oh, 100%. When I became an assistant manager, that was like the biggest thing for me, because you're getting to meet these kids coming up, going through the same process you did, and you can share how to get there.
Right.
Dude, yeah, I'm just blown away. I promise this is not sponsored by Vector Marketing,
Right.
But when they say skills for life, they really are skills for life. Not only the friends that I still have from Vector, but the legitimate skills, and personal growth was a big one. I know it's not about monetary things, but at 18, I remember during that first week of training, you wrote down a list of things that you want. And I remember the number 3 thing was an iPhone 3GS. And it was unreal that after 2 weeks, I had an iPhone 3GS. And I didn't realize it until later in the summer. You look at your list and like you knock out these big, like again, at 18, that was a big dream of mine. To have an iPhone 3GS. I had it in 2 weeks, pouring into myself, which is it's just crazy.
No, it is. And it teaches you the power of writing down goals, like actually putting pen to paper, or I guess Apple Pencil to an iPad nowadays. But the process of doing that, something happens in your brain. And I think the biggest thing, you don't have to go do direct sales to get the benefit from this. But what my manager did for me is he said, how much money do you need to make and why? And so I wrote that. Everyone knows those 2 things, right? You can easily say those 2 things. I needed $3,000 during the 30-day winter break in order to pay for spring semester. Very clear. He said, okay, cool. And then he reverse engineered the math of your average order for the company and the area, the average amount of calls it would take to set an appointment, and the amount of appointments that you need to make. And so now I had all the math, but he helped me break it down. And then he said, you need to make 22 phone calls a day for the 30 days of winter break, and you'll hit your goal. And I was like, nah. This is my first one where I didn't have that much belief yet. He's like, no way. It doesn't work like that. You can't just do a thing and then all of a sudden, like, whatever you believe in at the end will come true. And sure enough, exactly as mapped out, I committed to it, and bam, I made the money. And that's because the law of averages and consistency and like ratios work out. And you can do that kind of with anything, I've realized. Mm-hmm. It's like any other larger goal. If you could break it down into a small bite-sized activity and then map it out over like a period of time, that consistency just compounds and compounds and compounds. And all of a sudden at the end, there's this explosive result. And, everyone thinks like overnight successes happen overnight, but usually it's like 10 years of work in the dark, and then all of a sudden, bam.
Oh, so true. We both come from music, and I think it's so funny when people go, "Oh, they got so lucky," because it's their singles on the radio. Right. You didn't see the 6 EPs, the 4 mixtapes, everything that never made it to the radio. It's just there's a lot that goes into it.
Absolutely. Oh, so much to talk about with music as well. And we were talking a little bit offline about the burnout and then journey of going and exploring, creating space in your life for creativity and travel. And through my journey, I went from being a high achiever at Cutco, and then getting out of college, going into the work world, where I then kind of got into the sales aspect of a career with a base salary. But then eventually I decided that I really wanted to transition into marketing, because I could do it from anywhere in the world. And sales almost always, unless you're doing like SaaS sales over Zoom, it's location centric. You kind of have to be in that area. And so we're skipping a bit of the story. That's a pretty important part. But yeah, we should talk about travel a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, so many things, man. For you, because you never did sales, right?
Nope.
But you kind of learned all those things through your work, and you traveled the world. So how did you find your way with all that?
I think I found my way through a lot of mentors. Whenever I had someone I looked up to who was achieving a lot, I would ask them questions. I would learn as much as I can from them. And that's what I hear from you guys with Cutco. You have that kind of mentorship built in. And in order to succeed, you need to listen and really work with your mentors. And that's how I learned. And when I hear you guys talk about Cutco, that's what I think of.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's super important, because I kind of think about if I didn't do Cutco, and I don't know where I would learn this. But then when I met Nick, he's obviously super high achieving. I looked up to him for years before we started working together. And I think it's really cool how you found that in your workplace, because I think there's some people that have workplaces that don't have those mentors. And I think that's super tough.
Yeah. And I would say it comes with someone's personality. If you really want to achieve, you're going to find a mentor. You're going to find someone who can help you achieve, and you're going to ask the questions. But if you're comfortable, then you're comfortable. A lot of people are, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I think I can see the personality of someone who wants to achieve. They're going to find that mentorship.
Yeah, absolutely. And mentorship doesn't have to cost a lot either. Mm-hmm. Some of my best mentorship has come from books.
Yeah.
Let's do a blitz. Most impactful personal development book.
Ooh.
The Slight Edge.
Okay.
Jeff Olson.
Okay.
Halo Effect by me.
Yeah, he's got a book. You got a book.
You gotta plug that.
Have you read The Dip?
No.
By Seth Godin?
Oh, nice.
And so it's actually really, I've read it twice over the last decade. Probably should have read it more. But I'm probably going to read it again because of where I'm at in my journey. We've kind of touched offline.
Right.
But it talks about knowing when to quit things. Because people go through these things called the dip, right? Like you go snowboarding for the first time. It's so fun buying the gear, getting on the bunny hill. It's awesome. But then you go up on the mountain, you get your ass kicked. That's the dip. So the people that can stick through the dip the longest are going to succeed. But on the flip side, got to know, when it's good to call it to go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Which is, I think is really important, because resilience is awesome. But sometimes I feel like I've done this. We've talked about it a lot. Trying to be resilient, working through things for too long, it's holding you back from the next great thing.
Yes. Blind resilience is different.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's very, it's a very astute point for me in my life right now too. Yeah. I mentioned the car thing might not go much longer. And yeah, it's just that exact thing. It's like, we gave it a shot for 6 months.
Right.
And now the busy season of summer is over, rentals are winding down. I'm kind of reducing expenses on the company, looking at the P&L, and I'm like, this is way too much work for what it's worth.
Yeah.
And it afforded me the opportunity to meet some amazing people, which have opened up some new opportunities, which I'm way more excited about. And it's way higher impact, life-changing kind of money and impact, and my ability to achieve so many dreams and give back at a way higher level is at my fingertips. But I can't waste my time on something that's lower probability and a lower yield for the result of my time. So anyway,
self-awareness is key.
It's like, hey, we gave it a shot. It was cool. I still have the cars, kind of figuring out what to do with them now. I just had 2 cars, so not too much. I could still go to Cars and Coffee with them and have fun and meet some cool people, but I don't have to be an operator in that business anymore. And it took me years in business to be able to let go of something that quickly and that clean. So in my early entrepreneurial career, I would just like grind it out and hang on to things. And it's like, sometimes you just gotta let it go and move on and let the universe open up a new door for you that could be so much more profitable, so much more suited to you. You don't have to force it.
That's
Definitely.
We've been talking about that so much.
If you just keep being blind resilience, you're holding yourself back from other doors that you can be stepping into. So I love that you see that and it's not going to last that much longer. Let me do the next thing.
Right. Yeah. But I do never underestimate the value of a new connection, and the car is connecting me to you.
Yeah, seriously, man. Very cool. Very cool. I remember that night too, because you guys were chatting, and I think you were like on your way out.
I was.
And I swapped Instagrams real quick and had no idea what to expect, and here we are on the pod, spreading good. Right.
Spreading good on the pod. Yeah.
So going a little left field here, but it's been in the back of my mind. And I want to make sure I don't forget to talk about it. Right. As you talked about drinking at an early age. And again, we just met, we just started following each other, and I see your stories, and I saw you recently posted that you were 10 years sober.
That's right.
So I see there's more to this childhood story.
Yeah. And that was the part where I started talking about travel, and I mentioned like, we should circle back on travel, because I'm skipping the part mid college where there was a huge event that has also shaped my life. So, I mentioned my father passed away. I stuffed it with workaholism, and on paper, workaholism looks great. I'm taking 19 units as a freshman in college. I'm driving down from Flagstaff, Arizona. Shout out NAU Lumberjacks. That's where I went to school. I drive from Flagstaff to Phoenix because my buddies in the dorm had parents in Phoenix, and I was going and selling knives, build my network from scratch out there. So I was all weekend in Phoenix, driving my truck around doing demos, all week, crushing it, doing clubs, getting straight A's in college. That looks great on paper, but inside I was broken and it was unsustainable. So, that went on for a couple of semesters, and then I studied abroad in Australia, and the party animal came out. I flunked all my classes, partied the entire time, wasted all the money that I'd saved up to go there, came back, got D's in the classes that I had tried to take in Australia, came back again, got D's again. And I just took the same classes 3 times in a row and paid for all of it through all this blood, sweat, and tears, coming back, grinding all summer for Cutco. I'm paying for college and I'm not even attending or passing. It's just an insane loop. Why am I even doing that? Right. And so that workaholism started to then come off the rails. And as college went on, I just started to party more and more and more. I was fascinated by, surrounding myself with building the scenario. I loved throwing parties. This is actually where music comes in too. I loved building the scenario where everything was planned out, taken care of, perfect, and then I could just escape. And so I sought to build those scenarios all the time, constantly. And over time, obviously that just doesn't work. You can't do that all the time, especially if you have a predisposition to be an alcoholic or an addict like I do. And so I ended up having some very bad choices line up with me ending up in a little stint in jail, and had a huge wake-up call. And I was like, what am I doing? I had every opportunity. I had early success in business, and here I am. My best thinking got me here. And so I had to realize it's no one else's fault but my own. I started at the beginning pointing fingers at this person, that person, that person. And then after a few weeks, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm here because of me. I'm here because of my actions, my choices. And something my father said came back to me. He said, Jeff, you have to accept the consequences to your actions. But another saying that he also said was, you also have to make the best and laugh the rest off. And so I, at that moment, surrendered. I don't even know where these words came from, but I just looked up and said, God, if this is how I'm going to best serve man, then so be it. But if there is any chance I can get a second opportunity to go do something more and give back more, then please give me that chance. It was the simplest form of a prayer, but I didn't really grow up religious, going to church. Like I was exposed to it a little bit through my best friend's family and loved them and, owe a lot to them and all the love that they showed me. But, my parents were split up when I was young, and I was baptized Lutheran and then like never went to church ever. And so I didn't really have a spiritual connection. And after my father passed away, I had forsaken God. I said, there is no God. Like, why would he take my father? And now I've come to realize that, I'm blessed to have had 16 years with my father. A lot of people don't even get that. And I also come to realize that my father's choice to drink was his choice. That's not God's will. That's his free choice. And so, all that coming to fruition in this moment where I'm sitting in a jail cell thinking and surrendering and saying, like, if I can serve man in some other way, then like, please give me that chance. And I felt this peace wash over me. It was wild. It was like a lightning bolt moment where it just hit me. And I realized in that moment, everything was going to be okay. I don't know what it was. It was like a hug. I just felt like, wow, I can sleep now. And for the first night in 3 weeks, I slept. And then I woke up that next day, and one good decision at a time, I just started to do the next right thing. There were these guys that were Hispanic in my like group cell. They couldn't read their court papers they had just been given. I took 4 years of Spanish. I tried to translate it for them. The library cart came by. I grabbed a book. The person comes through. It's like, hey, there's a meeting. People are getting together, talk about sobriety. Oh, there's a church-funded rehab. I kept raising my hand for the right things. Right? There were other choices, of course. I kept going the next right thing, and it slowly started to build my self-esteem back up. It started to build this momentum in me that, it's going to be okay. There's going to be a chance. Maybe there is a way out of this. And so one step at a time, I actually read 90 books in 90 days. I went through a church-funded a 90-day rehab program, and I emerged from that a completely different person. I had like rewired my entire brain and neuroprocessing center, and I plugged into a community when I got out that really supported me. I got back in touch with my family and my friends from college. Unfortunately, like a lot of them I had to cut off. They were good people for most of them, but a lot of them I just had so much history with, and I couldn't do it. Like I couldn't have those people on my cell phone. I couldn't live in that area. I would just be too tempted to go back and go party. And I don't party like normal people, right? Like that's the thing with an alcoholic or an addict. Like you have this phenomenon of craving. So once you start, you can't stop. And like all my friends could just have a drink and then go home. So with that being said, like, shout out to all them. If any of them are hearing this, like so much love and so many memories from that time in my life, but I had to make a clean break, not only do a lot of the internal work, but also make a geographic change and a total clean slate on my whole list of contacts. So I came back to San Diego from being out of state for 4 years in college, and no degree. I actually had 2 felonies at that time, and my prospects for work were not looking good. But one day at a time, I kept the first thing first, and that was staying sober. Because I knew that if that goes, everything else goes. Anything else I put in front of my sobriety, like a girlfriend or a birthday or whatever, if I go start drinking and partying again, I'm going to lose everything that I've built. It's happened time and time again. I've done it. I've built it up and burned it down, built it up, burned it down over and over again. And so once I subscribed to this new way of living, all of a sudden it unlocked all my positive traits, and it started to suppress my defects of character, which for years my defects of character had just been coming out. Selfishness, self-seeking behavior, lying, cheating, stealing, like all the bad things about me were exaggerated when I was drinking and partying. But I cut that thing out, and all of a sudden, like the person I'm supposed to be emerges. Imagine that. And through rehab, I was also able to heal the little boy within me that was so hurt and that had experienced so much trauma, and at certain points like shame in my upbringing and certain aspects that I had to like really dig deep and go and solve. One of the things that Tony Robbins says is heal the boy and the man will appear. And that was my experience. Like I had to heal that little boy within me that was just going around hurting people as a grown adult, because I was so emotionally immature that I didn't have any coping mechanism other than to just drink about it. So now I do. Now I have plenty of mechanisms, and I can, I'm 10 years sober. I get to help people all the time go through their first throes of sobriety. And, I've helped many people that are young to just navigate their 20s without drinking and partying every single weekend. And, that really fulfills me. Like this shirt I have on right now, First Step House, they're a detox down in San Diego. And, I've supported them, done fundraisers with them. And, some of my friends from San Diego actually started it. They take people off the street, no insurance, totally free. First 7 days, you go in there and you can just get sober and just get your head about you. And from there, then it's a launching pad to go into a sober living and like do all the extra steps then after that to get your life back on track. And so that's a big part of my life, big part of the way that I give back, not only monetarily, but with my time.
Wow,
awesome.
man. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. It's like a 10-minute soliloquy, but
No, it's real though, and I appreciate you sharing because I think a lot of people need to hear it. And like you said, going through your 20s and not partying every weekend.
Right.
So for me, I'm kind of the exact opposite. I didn't have my first drink till I was 20. I was that kid. I took all my friends that were wasted. Like I would be the DD. I take them to the 18 plus clubs. Like I was that guy in college. And then I started drinking at 20, loved it, and honestly still do. But Katie and I talk about that a lot. Is like we give up drinking twice a year just to do a cleanse. And we do dry January, obviously pretty cliche. But this year I did it really different, which I'm super proud of. I'm super excited to do it again this upcoming year. Is I started an accountability group. So it's not about just giving up alcohol for a month. I decided to give up alcohol and not change anything about my life, but only enhance it. Because usually when me and Katie give up drinking for a month, we hide. We don't hang out with anybody. We don't go to parties. We don't do anything. Right. So I had this checklist in this accountability group. There were things like I had to host an event. I had to go on a vacation. I had to be part of a wedding. There was like all these little check marks, and I shared the checks with other people. And some of them, these followers I'm not even friends with, but they wanted to join the group. And I let them in, and it was really cool hearing people's stories. We'd hype each other up to like get through it. And we threw that event at the brewery. Yeah. And that was crazy because I flew the whole team, and all those people, they're from all over the United States. I flew them in, and some of those, no hate, but they were part of the group, and they broke that weekend, which is fine, but it was a great feeling not breaking. And actually I kind of got high off of it. It felt really cool. So, I don't know, a little ramble of my own, but I just think that's amazing. You did it for 10 years and are continuing to do so.
Thank you. Yeah. Part of it is like eliminating that internal desire, but the other part of it are just simple little life hacks. Like when you get to a party, if you don't want to drink, immediately grab a drink, but one that's non-alcoholic. If your hand is empty, everyone's like, what are you drinking? What are you drinking? What are you drinking? If you have anything in your hand, they don't care.
So fun.
One of those little hacks, right? Pineapple and Red Bull, amazing drink at the bars. No one knows. It looks like a mixed drink. And you can go to a concert till 2 a.m. You're all jacked up on Red Bull and you're totally sober. You drive home after. Just little things like that really make living in sobriety enjoyable. And I remember going to concerts when going to like Reggae Fest at Del Mar. I'm in high school and we're trying to line up the weed before, and we got to get it in, and then how are we going to smoke it? And then it's such a feat to just go see an artist play. And there's so many variables and factors. And then, you get to the center of the crowd, and then, someone has to pee. And it honestly ruins the experience. Everyone thinks it enhances the experience, and maybe it does. Like I had some profound moments, doing these things. But, nowadays, like I've gone to Electric Daisy Carnival in Las Vegas sober for like 3 years.
Wow.
And, I'm there all weekend. People are doing whatever they're doing. And man, my wife and I love it. We drive home after each night, and we're totally sober. And we go stage to stage, and we're not so full of liquid that we have to constantly go to the bathroom and leave when you just got to the main stage center and took you 45 minutes to get there. And now it's like, I gotta leave, and the person I'm just waiting to see the entire weekend just went on. Like or, you know, heaven forbid, overdose or any other health complication that comes with overshooting the mark. Man, it's so much more simple to just live a life where you're not constantly inebriated or like trying to get there. And yeah, I found that every aspect of my life got better once I got sober. So like, why would I ever go back?
Dude, I love that.
Yeah, I just have no desire to go back.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool. I still like drinking. I love beer. But I really respect the personal growth that you have through your sober journey and just recognizing things in yourself that you didn't like or your childhood trauma. Because I feel like everyone our age is still dealing with those things every day.
Absolutely.
And for you to share that, again, thank you for sharing all of that. But yeah, being sober, I'm sure helps you just get better every day. Like you talk about, do the right thing every day as much as you can.
Thank you. Yeah, and I want to touch on a few things that you mentioned. This isn't to say that drinking is wrong. Like, I DJ'd in nightclubs in San Diego in my 20s, and when they gave me a free bottle, I gave it to my friends. And we all partied. Drinking is not okay when you drink and then you drastically affect other people's lives negatively because of it. You drink and drive and put other people's lives at risk, or you ruin relationships and cheat on people and break hearts and don't call your parents back for weeks and they're worried about you, sleepless nights. Like, that's when the behavior is not okay, right? And that's the type of stuff that I was doing, except for I never did drink and drive. That was one big thing that I never did. But, you know, it's once it becomes a problem, it becomes a problem. And a normal person would just stop. But alcoholics and addicts don't have that ability. They protect their drinking, and it's anything but that, right? It's not that, right? And so it's this obsession around it. And so, yeah, like, all good. Hats off to you if you have a couple beers and you can stop. That's freaking awesome. I can't, and I have that self-awareness. But yeah, then the whole like dealing with trauma thing, if I didn't get to do that when I was 22, I probably never would have done it. Mm-hmm. And so I really cherish that time. Like, it was so difficult to go through, but now I see it as such an asset. I got to spend 6 months working only on me, not worrying about bills. I just read books and focused on me, and I got to go to counseling and deal with trauma and write and journal and write letters and just have so many profound breakthroughs. It set me up for the rest of my life to have a clean slate and not have to have all this baggage from the past, right? So, yeah, and like most people never get to go through that.
Mm-hmm. So true. A couple of things I want to touch on there is, one, so I'm 32, and at this time in my parents' life, they would have already had a child, you know, myself. I was already alive. And I don't know about you guys, but growing up, especially as a kid, even till a teenager, I thought my parents were superheroes. I thought they just were so dialed. They had everything figured out. I never heard anything about money. I got whatever we wanted. Like, it was just very like, I don't know. I thought my dad was like a pro baseball player and he just didn't tell me. Like, I really thought they were that cool, you know? And this is also definitely like, my family's awesome. But like, as you grow up, you see that there's still things that like your elders, your grandparents, your aunts and uncles, they deal with some shit, you know? And then now I'm at their age and I deal with stuff. I like figuring things out, and I kind of feel like, man, I thought by 32 I would just be living this, like, I don't know, dad life or something different where like I'd be more like settled or clear on things. But it's interesting. So it's cool that you kind of had so much time to process at such a young age, because I feel like some of us, like you mentioned, haven't.
Yeah.
And the second part of that is I've been thinking just the last few days about like gratitude. And, you know, it's kind of cliche. People talk about, oh, gratitude's the best attitude, which I really believe in. But I've always been really grateful for the bad times. And one thing is, as a musician, I feel like the best stuff that I've written is when I was going through the roughest times, because you can't fake that emotion. So I've always dialed there. But I think about when you go through something bad, you don't ever wish that on yourself or anybody else. But do you feel like all the hard stuff that you went through, just from your dad, from your time in jail, like that really, like you said, sets you up for the rest of your life?
Yes, it did. but you also have the choice to either let it set you up for the rest of your life or to continue going down that path. And so there is choice involved, I think, in those. Like, yes, bad times will come, no doubt, but you have the choice to either let it define you or let it, become your reputation. And so, yeah, I think that it's really important. Like, there's this analogy, the feather, the brick, and the truck. My friend's mom told me this, and I thought it was really profound. So she believes that when you're born, there's this path that you're supposed to be on. It's your righteous path that you're supposed to walk. You're supposed to help others. You're supposed to live in your highest self. And as much as you deviate from that path, you'll start to get hints that it's not the right thing to do. And so at first it'll be a feather that just falls from the sky and just lets you know, like, probably not a good thing to do. And then if you keep going down that path of the wrong way, you'll get a brick thrown at you, another hint that's more substantial. And guess what? You keep going down that path off of what you're meant to be doing, you'll get hit by a truck. And when that happens, that for me was that moment in jail, right? Either it's going to kill you or it's going to make you stronger. And for me, yeah, that made me stronger.
Yep. You chose strength.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also important to say that a lot of people, might keep choosing the wrong path, but that doesn't mean they can't eventually choose the right path. I think
Absolutely.
It's great that you were able to figure that out at a young age, but some people get older and eventually, hopefully, they get that right path. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So true.
I mean, before I made that choice, there were a ton of wrong choices in a row, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, the turning point is whenever you want. One of the sayings that I've come to really love is, you've hit bottom when you stop digging. It's like,
wow.
You can always just keep digging deeper into, but once your habits aren't serving you, it takes a decision, a moment to just turn it around. And it might take you 10 years to finally decide, but then once you make the decision, boom, you can turn it all around.
Game on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. It just makes me think about what you guys were talking about earlier. Like, both of you guys are musicians, and you talk about people who become famous overnight. Like, there's a lot of work that goes in that. There's a lot of work you have to do on yourself for you to become your higher self, your best self. And yeah, I mean, looking at you, if I just knew part of your story, I would be like, oh, at 22, you had it all figured out. But no, you had all this work that you're going through in your whole life. And yeah, just hats off to you.
Thank you. And on that note, I have a question for you. Do you have this deep purpose or this like big why that you've really contemplated and decided this is worth working on for decades? This is worth devoting my life to. Do you guys have something like that?
Yeah. Wow. So it's a crazy time, like we talked about, just what we're going through right now. But so my moment, you both know it, was I was a full-time musician, owned a recording studio, was touring, like just living my life at 23. And my next door neighbor got diagnosed with cancer, and I kind of just shifted because I saw what they went through. I'd never experienced hardship like that, and went all in on just helping families like that. Fast forward 9 years later, where we're at and we've done that, right? We've continued to do that for kids and families all over the world. But and sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I don't know if I told you this the other night, but last week we fulfilled 3 dreams in one day. So we sent one kid to San Diego, one kid to Disney World, and then one, you all know Isabella, we helped her start her own clothing line. And so I went to her 8th birthday party to give her a check for her first paycheck for her clothing line. And after she, I gave her the check, she was so excited, but she stopped and she looked up to me and she said, "Brody, what is your dream?" And like, I've just done so many TV shows and news interviews. And I was going to say to help kids with it. And then I like looked around, everybody's got like, they're filming, and I just like, for the first time in my life, I don't know what my dream is, because I spent the last almost decade of my life making all these other dreams come true, which I've loved. But I had no idea that the thing that I didn't want to be monotonous, just in the cycle. Again, it's been a good cycle to be part of, but I haven't been able to like unleash my creativity, unleash my real self, unleash my purpose to the full potential.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going through right now. And that's kind of what we were talking about the other night, is like taking the time. And I feel bad having to step away from this project and this cycle, but I know, give myself 4, 5, 6 months, something big is going to happen that's going to be able to help more. Like you said, with more abundance, we can help more people and spread more good.
Absolutely.
So, don't know if that was the answer you're going for, but that's just, dude, it's been a thing the last few months, and he's witnessed it firsthand. But it's to a point where I can't sit on the sidelines on myself anymore, because I'm worth it.
Yeah.
I gotta go back to what I do best.
Absolutely. And a lot to touch on there. Like I want to comment on that, but I also want to hear what you have to say.
So for most people, they know my big why is my brother. My brother has Down syndrome. He's 11 months older than me. He's been with me my whole life. I never knew he was going to live past the age of 25. So really my whole life has been dedicated to doing things to make him proud, whether it's helping a nonprofit that helps kids with cancer or helps kids with Down syndrome, or, the homeless, the hungry. But I think my why has changed over the years. Before, in my 20s, it was to make enough money to just donate to all these organizations, which I did. And then in my 30s, having kids, it's my why is now just raising the best kids possible so that they can have that same drive to help people. But, they're helping people because that's what I do. That's what my wife does. They know their uncle. So yeah, my why right now is raising the best family I can have.
I love that. That's awesome.
And what's yours?
Well, I had a lot of time to contemplate when I was in jail, and then also when I was newly sober. I avoided music for a year after.
I was going to ask about that.
I was DJing in college and promoting. That was a part of what fueled my drinking and using, because you're paid to be there and you're paid to party. It was the perfect thing for an alcoholic or an addict. It's everything I wanted. But I realized that it was too closely associated. So the first year of sobriety, I cut ties with that too. That was a hard choice to make. Sold my studio monitors. I just started working and bettering myself, and I was totally done. But then music called to me. 6 months in, I'm like, man, I heard a song on the radio. I was like, I really want to learn how to remix that, or do something with it. And then a year into sobriety, an artist came in town. I'm like, I feel solid in my sobriety, and I really want to go to this club and see this artist. And so music kept calling to me. And I also was scrolling through my iTunes at the time, and I realized how much music. I was hypersensitive to anything relating to drinking and using now, because I'm sober. But anytime it's stated in a song or, suggested, which it is all the time, I was hyper aware of it. And so I noticed how much music was perpetuating all of the drinking, partying, objectifying women, just all the things, right? And so I started to kind of craft this vision where I was like, wow, this music, it's a medium, right? Some creatives have literature and books as their medium. Some have movies, and musicians have music. You get to stamp this creative act in time, and then let it be shared for generations. What a powerful thing! What a way to capture message and let it perpetuate. But a lot of the message that's being captured, I felt that I at least gravitated towards and listened to when I was so attracted to that lifestyle. It was perpetuating a lifestyle that didn't serve me. And in my experience, a lot of musicians might have just not had thought or care with the lyrics that they put into the song. They said it because it was catchy and they didn't care, or they did it particularly to trend because it was about that issue. Drinking, using, selling drugs, objectifying women, all the things that become popular and viral and blow up. And so I thought about this interesting balance between, well, there's the market that has demand, and then there's the creators that feed into the demand, but also the creators set the demand in a sense, because if they don't put it out there, then it doesn't have the chance to perpetuate itself, right? Mm-hmm. And so I thought about, well, the real power really is in like the songwriters, the producers, the ones that are crafting that message. And it has to sound good, it has to be world class. Like there's no doubt that the beat has to be dope, people have to love it. But what if it had a good message? Like what if the sickest song that just went viral on TikTok, who everyone's showing all their friends, was spreading some serious like positive good? And so that was my vision. It was like, what if I could become one of the best producers in the world? It might take me a decade, 10 years, 10,000 hours. I'll go to school for music production. I'll start chipping away. I'll learn, whatever I need to learn. I'll start to collaborate with more and more higher level people as my music will sound better. I'll have more and more influence. And then it might take 10, 15, 20 years, but I'll be somebody in the industry if I commit to it. I know that. I know that to be true through my personal development, through cut code, through all the things I've done. If you stay consistent over a long period of time, it'll rule out everyone else who's given up along the path, and you'll be one of the best in the world. It's just how it works. Mm-hmm. And so I built this big why in getting to that point where like I could be one of the best known producers in the world with the best sound that everyone wants to work with. And then guess what? I have good intentions. So then all the projects that come out of that epicenter of creativity will be good.
Wow. I love it. And so where are you at with that journey? Because I know you're doing so much other business stuff. So how do you find the time to trek along on that journey?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's honestly tough to balance. I'm not by any means as consistent or as perfect at it as I would like to be. And I've gone through ebbs and flows of different journeys that supported my music more or took more away from my time with music. And, since making that decision in my early 20s, that's what I wanted to do long term, I also knew realistically I had debts to pay in my 20s. I had things that I wanted to go do. And so I had to make money too. And music, as you know, it takes a long time to pay. Mm-hmm. And so I started to continue doing business. And I would balance it here and there. And like slowly I would reinvest in things. And I was doing sales, after college, and that was location centric, but it had a base salary, and I was able to then invest in building my marketing agency and doing shows. And so I had kind of like 3 full-time things going on. And that led up to when I did a 3-week trip to Bali. And we had talked about this the other night, which really resonated with you on that like note of burnout and wanting to do a trip. I was working so much. I mean, when my wife met me, it was at this time. She's like, you just had bags under your eyes. Like you looked so tired. And I was like, yeah, I'm working a full-time career. I'm promoting shows. I'm doing shows. I'm going to school for music production, and I'm building a marketing agency on the side to replace my income. I am so tired, but I was on the grind and I had a vision. I wanted to replace my income so that I could be anywhere in the world and make US dollar and be able to then make music. And so that vision became realized about 6 months later. Like I had already been working on the agency for 18 months and like ramped it up, but it got to the point where it met my income from my day job, and I gave them a month notice and booked a trip to Bali. And I invited my wife to come with me. She was my girlfriend at the time. We've been dating for 4 months, and I'd been working towards this journey for 3 years. I had been building a marketing agency for 18 months. And I finally like had the ticket booked, and then 4 months to go until that ticket was already booked, I met my girlfriend, who turned into be my wife. And so she was coming in at like the end of this 3-year journey. And I'm about to leave on the trip, And I said, hey, I'm going to Bali for 4 months. Here's why. Do you want to come with me? And her life circumstance worked out. She actually had just gotten laid off from a job that she didn't like anyway. And she was like, you know what? Yeah, we're going to figure out in the first 10 days if we like each other. It's a big risk, but if I don't like you, I'll just move to the other side of the island. So,
but it worked out.
We ended up spending 4 months in Bali, and that was a magical time. I was able to experience what it was like to live in a country with so much less than what we have over here, and really live there. Not just vacation there and go to all the nice places, but like ride a scooter and talk to the owner and rent that for like $1 a day and like negotiate with them, and then like, you know, take it back for service and talk to him and learn a little Indonesian and like infuse myself in the culture and like go do some beach pickups because trash and pollution is a big problem over there, and like really be there, but also like live on so much less. Like, oh my gosh, like we don't need all this stuff that we have, all these expenses. I was able to reduce my overhead. It was like myself and my wife all out, like food, scooter, gas, like trip, whatever, $1,500 a month, both of us. And, you know, I was making US dollar for that used to support me in the United States for my agency. And so it was a time where like I was doing that geo arbitrage and I had time. I was managing some clients' work through real estate digital marketing, and I was living in Bali and making music, you know, renting out studio space, releasing songs, doing mixes online. Like it was a dream realized, and really love that and cherish that time in my life, because when I then came back like 4 months later, I was on fire.
Yep.
Like it was unlike anything. It was a sabbatical, an early retirement, like whatever you want to call it. I actually worked all the way through it, but it felt so recharging. And now, like throughout the rest of my early relationship and then my marriage, we've continued to like try and go travel and like do that often. You know, like we can bring the work with us, but like go somewhere for a month, go for 2. You know, why not? Like go recharge, go explore, go find another culture. Man, we love that, and highly suggest it.
Fired up. I know you and Shell did a lot of traveling too, huh?
Yeah, when we were younger. Now we can't go anywhere. We got 3 kids. We got to stay home. But
That's what everyone says.
Once they get older, definitely want to start traveling again.
Yep. Everyone says travel now while you don't have kids. I'm like,
Yep.
we are.
That's so, yeah, Katie and I travel a lot, and yeah, these next couple of years we're trying to expedite it and just do even more.
Yeah.
Even more.
Absolutely. And you deserve it. And that's what I wanted to touch on earlier when you were saying, you know, you've been building other people's dreams for 10 years, and, you know, now you almost feel bad for like going for a quarter and taking some time to yourself. And my response to that is, you're leaving this company in good hands. You've put in so much energy over the last decade. You have good people around you. You leave for 3 months, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to keep going.
Yeah.
Go focus on you, recharge. And I think about it like a relationship. You know, you are this business owner. You have a relationship with this business. But one of the principles that I learned in premarital counseling, which is great and I highly recommend, you really have 3 relationships in your relationship. You have the relationship with your spouse. You have the relationship with yourself. And then they have their relationship with themselves. And so I kind of think about it the same way with you in this business. Like, you have the relationship with yourself and you have the relationship with the business. So like,
so true.
You gotta take care of the relationship with yourself in order to bring the best version of yourself to the business. So I'd be willing to bet that you go for 3 months, this you know, spring quarter, whatever, Q1 2024, you leave for 3 months, come back, you're gonna be on fire and take this thing to the next level.
I'm on fire just thinking of it. So thank you, man. This is great. I think we can go all day, honestly.
Yeah,
so
we can.
This is going to be a 7-part podcast with Jeff right here. But no, man, so much good stuff. Honestly, so much. So thank you for the time, the value. But before we let you go, what is next for you?
What is next? Well, most recently, through the cars, I met some awesome kids. I call them kids because they're like in their like early 20s, doing day trading. And I've always kind of avoided that, like the finance world. But then after having a real estate podcast, I interviewed some options traders and became convinced like, oh, wow, this is, if you know what you're doing, it's high risk, but if you know what you're doing, it's a great way to make money. And so more recently, I have done a lot of work on my self-worth and like, you know, what do I deserve? And is it okay to make X sum of money? And what's my current thermometer at? Like when I pass it, the thermostat kicks on the AC and brings me back down. Like what's that current level? And like, how can I expand it? And so currently that's what I'm really focused on is man, if all these people are making all this money through day trading, stocks, futures, options, etc., like what if I learned that? I spent the next 6 months or a year like mastering that skill, maybe longer. I mean, I don't want to assume that it's that easy, but I'm about 2-3 months into the journey, and it seems like from learning from the right people, from investing in top paid coaching, right, from like doing the things, committing to it over a long period of time, it seems like it's feasible to replace all of the the things that I'm doing now and be able to level up everything, but also give way more, like exponentially more. And I guess what I'll wrap up that thought with is this. I alluded to it earlier. What's my formula for how much to give?
Okay.
So I got this from Jim Rohn, great personal development. 70% is what you should live on. 10% you should invest yourself into whatever you think is right. 10% you should give to someone else to invest for you. And the last 10% you give away. And so each year I strive to give 10% of my income to charities, nonprofits, and organizations that I believe in. And if I make 10 times more, then I'm going to give 10 times more. So that's what I'll end the podcast with. Because if you don't give $1 of $100, you're never going to give it 1 million of 10 million.
I love that. I actually heard Tony Robbins talk about that same thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people say, I'll donate when I make my first million. But it's like, why not off the first 100?
Yeah.
Because you're never going to build that habit.
You're not going to give 100 grand of a million.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, so fire.
Got to
so
build
good.
the habit now.
So good, man. Thank you so much. Where can people find more about what you're up to?
Sure. So, online, obviously I've done so many things that you'll see all different kinds of podcasts and all kinds of different stuff. But probably the thing that I'm most active on, honestly, is my Instagram. And it's my everything Instagram, right? It's music, it's real estate marketing, it's my travel, it's my lifestyle. Like it's me. And so that's Clean Slate Music. And Clean Slate spelled a little differently. The A is before the E. When I was creating it, I really wanted the normal spelling, but it was taken. So check that out, Clean Slate Music. And yeah, that's where I'm most active. Would love to hear from anyone that heard this podcast and it reached them in some way. We're here to spread good. And that's, through music, through podcasts, through everything that this organization is doing, and really looking forward to supporting you as much as I can.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. If you liked what you heard here with Jeff, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and
Smash the bell and buy some merch.
Yep. Oh, of course. The new winter line came out. I know Jeff's already got his goods. Right. But yeah, we got the new hats, new crews, new hoodies, new sweats. Thank you all for supporting. And I know I've said it 14 times, man, but thank you for being here. Massive value. And I know we're just going to keep talking after it rolls. So, all right, guys, keep spreading good.